Every season has a purpose, even this one.
Night falls over a silent landscape. The wind moves through dry grass, and somewhere in the distance, a clock ticks. Slow, relentless, unstoppable. Every second slips away into eternity. But have you ever stopped to wonder what those seconds mean? Why do some seasons of life feel filled with joy, while others seem wrapped in darkness? Why do some prayers feel answered instantly, while others echo into silence? Why do we experience moments of birth and moments of loss, seasons of building and seasons of breaking? What if none of it is random? What if every moment, even the painful ones, was written into a divine rhythm long before we were born? Hidden within the ancient wisdom of Scripture lies a passage that has haunted, comforted, and awakened generations. A passage written by a king who possessed unimaginable wealth, power, and knowledge, yet stared deeply into the mystery of existence. That king was Solomon. And in the book of Ecclesiastes, he recorded a truth that still echoes through the corridors of time. A truth found in Ecclesiastes 3:1, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Not some things, not the good things alone, everything. And when Solomon wrote those words, he was not speaking as a philosopher sitting comfortably in a palace. He was speaking as a man who had walked through every season life could offer. He had tasted victory and emptiness, celebration and regret, wisdom and confusion. And after experiencing it all, he reached a startling conclusion. Life moves in seasons designed by God. Seasons we cannot control. Seasons we cannot skip. Seasons we often fail to understand while we are living through them. But Solomon goes further. He begins to unfold a poetic rhythm that reveals the divine pattern hidden behind human experience. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot what is planted. Ecclesiastes 3:2. The words move like waves, rising and falling, light and shadow intertwined. Birth and death, planting and uprooting, healing and breaking. These contrasts reveal something profound. Life was never meant to be a constant state of comfort. Instead, it unfolds like a sacred cycle. And yet, this truth can be unsettling, because deep inside the human heart lives a quiet resistance to seasons we cannot control. We celebrate the season of birth, but we fear the season of death. We embrace the season of building, but we dread the season of tearing down. We love the season of laughter, but we try desperately to escape the season of mourning. And still, the seasons come. Solomon continues, "A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance." Ecclesiastes 3:3-4. At first glance, these words feel almost cruel. Why would God allow seasons of grief? Why permit moments of destruction? Why let sorrow exist at all? But Solomon is not describing chaos, he is describing order, a divine order so vast that human understanding often struggles to grasp it. Imagine a farmer standing in an empty field. To the untrained eye, the soil looks barren, dead, lifeless. But the farmer knows something the observer does not. The season of planting is coming, and what looks like emptiness is actually preparation. The same mystery unfolds within the human soul. There are seasons when life feels abundant, dreams grow, relationships flourish, faith feels strong and clear. But then, another season arrives. Unexpected loss, disappointment, waiting, silence from heaven. And in those moments, many begin to ask a painful question: where is God now? Yet Solomon's wisdom whispers a different perspective. Perhaps God has not disappeared. Perhaps the season has simply changed. Listen carefully to the next movement in this ancient passage. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Ecclesiastes 3:5. These words reveal a difficult truth. Not every moment in life is meant for holding on. Some moments are meant for letting go. There are seasons when relationships deepen, and seasons when paths quietly separate. There are seasons when doors open, and seasons when God closes them with finality. Yet human nature resists these transitions. We cling to seasons that have already ended. We mourn chapters that God has already finished writing. But the wisdom of Scripture reminds us that every ending carries the hidden seed of another beginning. Solomon continues the rhythm. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. Ecclesiastes 3:6. How many people spend years chasing something that was never meant to stay in their lives? How many hearts remain trapped in past seasons, unable to step into the next one? Solomon knew this struggle intimately. Despite his wisdom, he pursued wealth beyond imagination. He built magnificent palaces. He gathered knowledge from distant lands. He surrounded himself with pleasures the world could offer. Yet later in Ecclesiastes, he confesses something haunting. Meaningless, meaningless, everything is meaningless. Ecclesiastes 1:2. Why would a king who had everything feel such emptiness? Because he discovered something many learned too late. No season of life can satisfy the soul if God is absent from its center. The seasons themselves are not the purpose. God is. And without Him, even the most beautiful season eventually feels hollow. Solomon continues, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak. Ecclesiastes 3:7. Silence. Few seasons feel more uncomfortable than silence, especially when we are waiting for answers. The silence after a prayer. The silence after loss. The silence when life does not unfold as we hoped. Yet throughout Scripture, silence often becomes the place where God prepares His greatest work. Think of the years Moses spent in the wilderness before leading Israel. The silent years of preparation before David became king. Even the hidden decades of quiet life before Jesus Christ began His ministry. God is never idle in the silent seasons. He is shaping character, deepening faith, preparing hearts for moments that will change everything. But Solomon's poetic reflection continues. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. Ecclesiastes 3:8. Here the rhythm reaches its darkest tension. War and peace. Love and hatred. Light and shadow existing side by side in the human story. This is the paradox of life under heaven. We live in a world touched by both beauty and brokenness. A world where joy and suffering often walk the same road. Yet Solomon does not end his reflection in despair. Instead, he asks a question that cuts to the heart of human existence. What do workers gain from their toil? Ecclesiastes 3:9. In other words, if life is just a cycle of seasons, building and breaking, laughing and mourning, what is the point? Why endure it all? The answer begins to emerge in the next verse, a verse that reveals one of the most mysterious truths in the entire Bible. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Everything beautiful in its time. Not immediately, not according to human schedules, but in its time. And within every human soul, God has placed something extraordinary. A quiet awareness that life is larger than what we see, a deep longing for eternity, a sense that our story is connected to something beyond this world. That longing explains why success alone never satisfies, why pleasure fades, why achievements eventually feel incomplete, because the human heart was never designed for temporary seasons alone. It was designed for eternity with God. But here lies the mystery. Solomon admits that although eternity lives in our hearts, no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Ecclesiastes 3:11. We sense eternity, yet we cannot fully see the plan. We live inside the story, but we cannot read the final chapter. And that is where faith begins. Faith is trusting that the author of time knows exactly how every season fits together. Even the ones that feel painful, even the ones that make no sense, even the ones we wish we could erase. Because one day, when eternity finally unfolds before us, we may discover that the seasons we feared the most were the very ones God used to shape our souls, and the moments that felt like endings were actually the beginning of something far greater. But Solomon's reflection is not finished, because in the next part of this passage, he begins to reveal a deeper truth about how we are meant to live within these seasons. a truth that challenges everything we believe about control, purpose, and the meaning of our time on Earth. And what he reveals next might change the way you see every moment of your life. The human heart longs for control. We want to choose our seasons. We want the laughter without the mourning, the building without the breaking, the joy without the waiting. But life refuses to follow our preferences. Time moves forward with a rhythm that no human hand can stop. Empires rise and fall. Generations appear and disappear. Dreams are born, and sometimes they die before they are fully understood. And standing in the middle of this mysterious rhythm, Solomon confronts the question that every soul eventually faces. If we cannot control the seasons of life, how should we live inside them? After reflecting on birth and death, planting and uprooting, laughter and grief, Solomon reaches a powerful realization recorded in Ecclesiastes. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. Ecclesiastes 3:12-13. This may seem simple at first, but hidden within these words is a profound spiritual truth. Life is not about escaping the seasons. It is about recognizing God within them. Solomon discovered something that many people spend their entire lives searching for. Purpose is not found in controlling time. Purpose is found in trusting the one who created time. The modern world tells us that meaning comes from achievement, from accumulating wealth, from building influence, from becoming someone important in the eyes of others. But Solomon had already walked that road. He had more wealth than anyone around him, more knowledge than the greatest scholars, more power than kings across distant lands. And yet he confessed that none of those things could satisfy the deepest longing of the human heart. Because the heart was never meant to worship the gifts of life, it was meant to worship the giver. Solomon continues his reflection with a statement that reveals the eternal stability of God's work. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. Ecclesiastes 3:14. Human achievements fade, cities crumble, technologies become obsolete, fame disappears as quickly as it arrived, but the work of God stands untouched by time. The same God who formed the mountains, who placed the stars in the heavens, who guided the rise and fall of kingdoms, is still writing the story of every human life, even yours. And when Solomon speaks about fearing God, he is not describing terror. He is describing reverence, a deep awareness that life is sacred because it comes from God, a recognition that every moment matters because it exists inside his eternal plan. But Solomon's reflections take another unexpected turn. As he observes the world around him, he begins to notice something troubling. In the places where justice should exist, corruption appears. In the courts where truth should reign, injustice often prevails. And so he writes, I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In the place of justice, wickedness was there. Ecclesiastes 3:16. This observation feels painfully familiar. Even today, the world often seems upside down. Good people suffer. The wicked sometimes prosper. Truth is ignored, and injustice appears to win. These moments can shake the human soul. They raise difficult questions. Where is God when evil seems to triumph? Why do righteous people face hardship while corruption spreads? Solomon does not ignore these questions. Instead, he responds with a declaration that echoes through Scripture. God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. Ecclesiastes 3:17. Once again, time appears, but this time it points towards something greater than earthly seasons, a final moment, a divine reckoning, a day when every hidden action will be revealed, every injustice addressed, every secret exposed before the throne of God. This truth can feel unsettling because it reminds us that life is not only temporary, it is accountable. But Solomon continues observing the fragile nature of human life. He writes words that sound almost shocking. Surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. Ecclesiastes 3:19. Dust returns to dust. Breath leaves the body. The physical life ends. This reality confronts the pride of humanity. We build monuments as if we will last forever. We chase ambitions as if time will never run out. Yet the grave reminds every generation of the same truth. Life on earth is temporary. But Solomon does not end his reflection in despair. Instead, he asks one of the most haunting questions in the entire book. Who knows if the human spirit rises upward and if the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth? Ecclesiastes 3:21. At this point in history, the full revelation of eternity had not yet unfolded. But centuries later, the answer would come through the life of Jesus Christ. Through his resurrection, the mystery of eternity was illuminated. Death was no longer the final season. It became a doorway, a transition between time and eternity. The Apostle Paul later wrote in 1 Corinthians, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" 1 Corinthians 15:55. Because of Christ, the seasons of life are no longer random cycles ending in darkness. They are chapters leading toward redemption. Every tear matters. Every struggle shapes something eternal. Every season becomes part of God's greater story. But this realization brings us back to Solomon's original insight. If every season has a purpose, then even the difficult seasons carry meaning. The season of waiting may be shaping patience. The season of loss may awaken deeper faith. The season of silence may prepare the soul to hear God more clearly. And the season you are living right now, even if it feels confusing, even if it feels painful, even if it feels like nothing is happening, may be preparing something far greater than you can see, because the author of time is never late. He sees the beginning and the end, the seasons we celebrate, and the seasons we fear. And somehow, beyond our understanding, he weaves them together into something beautiful, exactly when the time is right. So the question that remains is not whether seasons will come. They will. The real question is this: will we trust God within them? Will we believe that our current moment, whether joyful or painful, still has purpose? Because one day, when time itself fades into eternity, we may finally see how every season of our lives fit perfectly into God's eternal design. If this reflection helped you see the seasons of your life in a new way, take a moment right now. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next biblical reflection. Leave a like to help this message reach more people who may be searching for purpose in their current season. And in the comments, share your thoughts. What season of life are you walking through right now? Sometimes the simple act of sharing can remind someone else that they are not walking through their season alone. And remember this truth from Ecclesiastes 3:11, He has made everything beautiful in its time, even the season you are living today.